She's not much to look at, but she's the best in the fleet. I'll have her flying in no time.
Hey, welcome to the first podcast. It is Monday, December 16th, recording at 1:23 Central Time, United States, and I am going to talk about perennials. This is a brand new podcast. It has not been on air anywhere. And I want to let you know that right off the bat. Perennial Falcon, kind of a play on words about plants and also a little bit of a Star Wars geek from the old days. Not this new stuff, but the old stuff for sure. So, when people think about perennials, they don't always think about the plants that I think of. And I want to make that kind of a mission and share that. I do have another channel, and that channel is It Hits the Dirt. And that's my video posting channel. I'm dealing with some health issues. I'm kind of behind on that channel, but I'm hoping that I can fill gaps with the podcast and back and forth with the videos. So hopefully that'll be something that everyone can enjoy. So today, let's talk about one of my favorite perennials. And I'm just going to get into it. I'm using a couple sources just for quick lists. So Mibelle, spelled M-I-B-E-L-L-E, biochemistry.com has a list I thought was interesting. And it's 8 surprising facts about moss. So now I'm giving it away. Moss is going to be that super perennial that everybody should have in their garden. And I'm just going to skim over a few of these facts, and then I've got another page, and I'm going to skim over those, and I'm going to talk about my personal experiences with moss and some of my takes on moss. So hopefully everybody will enjoy that. If you hear any background noise, I am running an incubator. It's kind of far away, but it may come in on the audio, and I apologize. And my lovely peeps, my quail, are in the background. They are my friends. They talk to me all the time in my building, so they may choose to talk to you, and it's just part of the thing right now. I do not have a studio. I'm not even close to having a studio. And you would laugh if you saw how I was doing this podcast, but here we are. So, I'm going to skip over number 1 on this list because they say moss was the very first plant on Earth, and I don't think anybody can verify that, but I do have some cool facts on the other website that will be plenty entertaining, so we'll go to that. Number 2, I love this. It's Christmas time, right? Reindeers love moss. Most animals do not eat moss. It's hard for them to digest. And they don't get a lot of nutritional value out of it. Reindeer, however, use a chemical, and I have not found the name of that chemical yet, and maybe you can put it in the comments, that is derived from moss that helps them keep their blood temperature regulated and keep them warm in the winter. So I thought that was a cool topic. And this is all segue. Every bit of this is going to be segue. And so hopefully you'll enjoy this. And if you hear a click or anything, that's me bringing the screen back up to make sure we're recording. Okay, so moss. They do not have roots. They have cell filaments, rhizoids, not to be confused with rhizomes. And all their cells absorb water and store it. And they can completely dry out and come back from hibernation over long periods of time. I suppose there would have to be some significant studies on each variety of moss, and that would probably take our lifetimes tenfold to get all the varieties and all the different cool things about them. Moss are diverse and a very interesting plant, but they are drought tolerant, which a lot of people think they have to have a lot of water. It's actually the other way around. They need water. They like water, but they don't die whenever they don't have it for a long period of time. So moss is kind of like the canary in the mine. If you ever heard any stories about canaries in the mines, the bird system can't quite take what the human system can, and they would take canaries in the mines to detect carbon dioxide before there were detectors. Thank goodness they got detectors and they're not killing tons of canaries out there. But mosses, since they do not have roots, they need to get the nutrients from the air. They absorb everything that is in the air, including pollutants. Okay? So they are a bioindicator of air pollution. And if you see moss dying in large patches, you've got a problem. Number 5 on this list was hilarious. I love it. I did not know this one, so it's kind of cool to share it. The question on number 5 is, ever heard of eco-graffiti? And I really never thought about this. Of course, Japanese, they build the moss balls that hang outside of bars to let everybody know that the first new brew is available for the year. And they do some other cool things in Japan with moss, but you can spell words like, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, anything you wanted. You can put it right up there. And any of the other religions, I don't want to be non-inclusive. I just rattling off some stuff off the top of my head. But, moss can be used to make graffiti, or what I would really call it is a wall garden of moss in the shape of a picture or a letter or a word. There's no limit to what you could do as long as you stick with one color palette, right? So, another thing, and this is a very important topic, and it's something that everybody should know, that moss has antiseptic properties. And after it was rinsed and cleaned, it could be applied to wounds to help heal them when bandages were not available. Another fact about moss, makes me wonder why more people don't have it in their garden, is we need moss. Moss absorbs more carbon and probably releases more oxygen than all the trees in the world. So not having moss everywhere you can have it available just seems like a waste. Instead of mulching, or instead of stone pavers in a path, or just stone pavers in a path, think about adding moss to your paths. Think about adding moss to your garden. Every space where moss sits, it does two things. It's going to absorb water and moisture and slowly return it to the earth, and therefore the plants around it. And the other thing it's going to do is it's going to share the nutrients that it gathers as well. So moss is a great mulch, and it's a living mulch instead of a dead mulch. I've already mentioned number 8, which is the moss craze in Japan. So let's just say that if you look at Japanese gardens and moss, you are going to find a vast amount of things. And again, I'm going to apologize if you hear clicks or anything. This is brand new. I'm learning how to do this, and I'm not very good at this. So Christine Meyer wrote this article, and again, it's mybellbiochemistry.com. I will try to put a link into the description for this website. And now moving on, I don't know how to pronounce this. I'm going to think it's kew.org. And the article is written by Ellen McHale. 7 interesting things about moss. This one here, talks about having having moss on roofs and walls. And here's where it gets into the oldest plant, which, like I said, I don't necessarily think we can validate that statement. It could easily be ferns. It's definitely mushrooms were the first biological to establish growth on Earth. Without the mushrooms breaking down things, nothing grows. So they're equally important. But they're not a plant, so they're not going to be covered. It's just an interesting fact that I want to add. Mosses, a non-flowering plant which produces spores and has stems and leaves, but does not have true roots. We've established it has not rhizomes, but rhizoids. And so mosses and their cousins, liverworts, hornworts, are classified as bryophyta or bryophytes in the plant kingdom. They date back to 450 million years, according to scientists. And they survive through a drastic range of climate change. They are comprised of 15,000 to 25,000 species, and there's a very good chance that they're wrong about that, that there's more. And among the world of plants, bryophytes are the second most diverse group, exceeded only by angiosperms, the flowering plants, with 350,000 species, and maybe we'll get into those another day. So again, they have rhizoids, and they are most definitely tougher than they look. They can survive the disturbances on the ground. They can live on rocks and trees and bark and leaves and up into trees. Spanish moss is actually not a true moss. I believe it's more of a lichen. You can verify that fact and get back to me on that as well as comments. Or I may get into the description and put it in there just to share. But there are plenty of types of moss that live on just about any kind of surface. They can live in just about any kind of soil. And they even survive in places like the desert. It's crazy. So if you think you can't grow moss in your garden, you are absolutely wrong. Moss grows pretty much everywhere on the planet, and if you have the right variety or species, it'll thrive in your garden. So find moss in your area. Take a very, very small sample with permission. You don't even need much more than a tweezer's worth, and stick it on similar medium, and eventually you will have moss. It'll continue to split and diversify and grow, and you don't have to kill the environment to do it. So stop collecting and gathering large samples of moss, people. Be patient. Take a small sample with permission somewhere, and instead of transporting moss, repropagate it in a small sample and work your way up. You're doing a service that way instead of an injustice. Okay, so our different species have adapted to survive in extreme conditions. Studies showing the lowest temperature that photosynthesis can occur in moss is around negative 15 degrees Celsius, and the highest around 40 degrees Celsius. So, you know, I'm thinking that's just off the top of my head. I'm terrible with math. 50, 60 degrees Celsius and on up into 100 plus. So, or I mean Fahrenheit, and then 100 plus in Fahrenheit, just for, you know, reference. But Google that. There's a calculator, no problem. In hot environments like prairies, deserts, one-way mosses tolerate heat is becoming dormant. When they desiccated, they dry out. They survive the heat much better than when they are hydrated. So if you see dry moss, you don't necessarily have to water it. You just let it do its thing. When the rain comes, it'll be beautiful, I promise. Lows, so the highs of 100 degrees Celsius and lows of 272 degrees Celsius. This is crazy resilient. Little plant is vibrant. It lasts. So we need to respect this plant and use it in our gardens. It can survive just about anything. It's a survival plant. It will help other plants survive. So soaking it up was number 4 on the category on this website. And, you know, basically when moss gets rain, it soaks it up. It becomes beautiful and vibrant, usually green or a variation of green. It can help maintain the temperature of the soil. So if you don't want your soil to be hot, you put moss on it. You don't want your soil to be cold, you grow moss on it. It does both. It stabilizes soil temperature. There's a little side note here. It says in the Arctic, they have opposite effect on temperature. They can prevent the warmth of the sun from reaching the ground and reduce the spread at which the ice thaws, keeping it cooler for longer. Another interesting fact. Bioluminescence is in all nature. It's in marine life, it's in plant life, and it is in moss. There are some varieties that absorb light and then emit it later. It says it's a reflection from the light in the chloroplasts. So there's a reference here. There is even a natural monument to amazing moss in Hokkaido, Japan, where you can see it growing in a cave, and it is bioluminescent. Biodiversity, number 7 on this website. From a miniature plants to gigantic trees, biodiversity is an incredible variety of all life on Earth. Mosses are important components of vegetation in many regions of the world, and they make up a major part of the biodiversity in moist forests, wetland, mountain, and tundra ecosystems. Moss communities offer microhabitants that are critical to the survival of the diversity of organisms. They provide valuable shelter for insects to live, lay their eggs, and hunt for food. And lastly, moss is a home for many, many varieties of life. And animals, they collect it for their nests, they collect it for their houses, they use it like chinking in log cabins, which humans did back in the day when they were building log cabins. In the United States, they put moss in there and chinked it up, and when it was dry, it was dry, and when it was wet, it was beautiful because the moss survived. And in detriment, sometimes the cabins slowly eroded away because the moss kept them wet, but not always. So those are websites that that are doing the information there, kew.org, and the name of the article again for the second website is 7 Interesting Things About Moss by Ellen McHale. Now, let's go to my experience. I am growing moss. I have multiple varieties. I've lost count. They grow on logs that I've left in my yard as part of the gardenscape. They grow on roots. They grow on the pathways, in sand, out of sand. And right now they're popping a beautiful green color. Just had a little bit of rain. Maybe a few weeks it'll be green. I'm not like the Kyoto Gardens. I don't have a lush green environment. But I've been literally just going around saying, hey, I collect moss. Do you have any moss in your yard? And going around neighbors and asking if I could get a little sample of their moss, or finding moss on my property in a place that is interesting. And then I decided to take a small tweezer worth of that material and plant it in another area that's similar and see if it takes off. So far, this has done very well. I have some areas that I put something the size of the cap on a ballpoint pen onto a root or into a path, and now I have an area that's 2+ feet in a year. It's spread. Spores, other things. Animals spread it after it's established. Animals will dig up or mess around there, and they spread it as well, and it fills back in. It's a wonderful plant. Had a lot of drought in the last year. I was already on the path of having moss, but I noticed that in places where moss had been established, plants still got affected by the drought, but they were less impacted. And this just accelerated my desire to spread more moss. So sometimes I just walk around with a pair of tweezers and I take a little piece of moss from where I've established it and put it somewhere else. And that's really all you have to do. I have purchased moss before, and let me make sure the website real quick. I believe it's going to be yes, mossacres.com. And they have what they call a milkshake, and then they have sampler sets of the pillowy types of moss and different things. And a couple years back, I did buy some varieties of those, and then just threw them out to see what would take. No rhyme or reason. I just wanted moss. I didn't care. So now I have moss. I have a Japanese maple that has a really small variety of moss growing on it. I don't have the little pine tree looking moss, and I want some of that, but I would like it to naturally appear, or to not have to buy that. And gardening shouldn't be crazy expensive. Trading with friends and working out deals with people, might be the best bet. And if you're looking into gardening for life, food, visual stimulation, protection from the sun, habitats for animals, perennials are where you want to go with this. You want to have plants that come back year after year. And yes, annuals have some benefits too, and great to have annuals, but annuals are perennials somewhere else. And if they're not meant to grow in your area, in your grow zone, you probably ought to consider that there is an alternative plant that is a perennial, maybe a native plant, that will serve that purpose. So, again, my other website is It Hits the Dirt, where I do video. And this podcast, Perennial Falcon, is a journey through a garden at warp speed. We are going to cover perennials of all different types and varieties, and hopefully by starting off with moss, the base layer that nobody thinks about, or very few think about, will give you an idea of the direction of this website and where it plans to go. Hope you enjoyed my video, and have a great day.